Most people never train for the moment that costs them everything. One outburst, one email, one weakness shown in the wrong room. That's all it takes to lose respect you spent years building. And the worst part, you won't even notice it until it's too late. There's a moment most men remember, but rarely speak about. That instant when someone pushes you just far enough to make your blood rise. Maybe it was a colleague who humiliated you in front of a team. Maybe it was a partner who twisted your words in public. Maybe it was a stranger's look that made you feel small. And in that moment, your body responded. Fast heart, tight jaw, a heat in your chest that begged to explode. But you didn't. Or maybe you did. Either way, the damage was done. Here's the problem. No one teaches men how to hold power under pressure. We're told to stand up for ourselves, but not taught how to stay grounded when provoked. We're rewarded for reacting fast, but rarely praised for controlled restraint. So, we grow up believing silence is weakness. Calm means we're losing, and if we don't fire back, we look soft. But here's the truth they never told. Your real strength doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't swing at every threat. It watches. It waits. And it only moves when the movement serves the mission. Becoming unbothered isn't apathy. It's skill. It's control. It's a nervous system trained like a weapon. Because if you don't train it, the world will hijack it. You'll spend your whole life reacting to provocations designed to rob your power. And this matters because, whether you realize it or not, every room you walk into is watching how you respond to fire. If you don't master this, you'll keep giving away energy, control, and respect to people who never deserved it. But today, right now, that changes. Not with noise, not with dominance, but with discipline. And if you've ever lost respect because you reacted too faster, stayed up at night, replaying what you should have, don't share that moment in the comments. You never know who might read it and realize they're not alone. Let's begin. The fire, when the world tries to pull you in. In 2019, I watched a CEO lose $3 million in investor trust, not because his product failed, not because his business was weak, but because he couldn't control one emotional outburst. It happened in a boardroom. A senior partner questioned a decision publicly, sharply, in front of the team, instead of breathing, listening, observing. The CEO snapped. His voice rose. His tone turned combative. His entire body language shifted from calm to chaotic. That 5-minute exchange wasn't just a reaction, it was a collapse. Within 48 hours, 2 major investors pulled out, not because they disagreed with his strategy, but because they couldn't trust a man who couldn't trust himself under pressure. That's the fire. It doesn't come with sirens. It comes disguised as confrontation, as challenge, as disrespect. It comes in moments when your pride wants to rise and prove something, and if you haven't trained for those moments, they will own you. Because the fire doesn't need to burn you physically, it just needs to make you flinch. Speak too soon. Reveal too much. Most men think strength is about pushing back, defending, overpowering. But true strength, the kind that bends boardrooms and earns loyalties built in silence, it's not about staying quiet because you're scared. It's about choosing stillness because you see the bigger game. You know how to let others play emotional checkers while you play long-form chess. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment of it." That's not a quote. That's an operating system. So ask yourself, when the heat rises, do you respond or do you react? Do you let their chaos pull you out of center? Or do you stay in your frame and let them reveal themselves? The world will keep throwing matches. That's not the problem. The problem is dry wood inside you. And the man who can see the fire, feel it rise, and still choose not to feed it, that man doesn't just survive the heat, he owns the room it burns in. The reaction reflex. Understand the pattern that breaks you. Most men don't realize this, but the moment they snap, they've already lost. Not because they got angry, but because they got predictable. Their emotions were no longer private, were public property. And in that instant, they gave away their power. There's a pattern to this, and it's been trained into you since you were a boy. You were told to man up when you cried, to defend yourself when insulted, to never back down from confrontation. And so you learned that real strength was loud, visible, immediate. You learned that if you didn't respond, you looked weak. If you didn't clap back, you looked like a coward. But no one told you that every reaction has a price, that every time you flinch, explode, or over-explain, you reinforce a dangerous idea that someone else has the power to move you like a puppet. Reaction is the enemy of command. And yet it feels so good in the moment, doesn't it? To fire off that angry text, to slam the door, to raise your voice and make them feel what you feel. But that satisfaction, it's not strength. It's a hit of emotional sugar sweet at first. But it crashes your integrity later, because when your buttons are easy to find, they're easy to push. And people learn this fast. They learn how to get under your skin, how to bait you, how to make you prove yourself. And once you're in that loop, always reacting, always justifying, always chasing control, you've already surrendered it. No man is free who is not master of himself. That's what Epictetus said, not just master of his schedule, or his finances, or his goals, but master of his own nervous system. Because the truth is, anyone can appear strong when things are calm, but when chaos enters the room, your reflex will reveal your training. So what is the reaction reflex really? It's the programmed urge to defend your ego before you even assess the threat. It's the knee-jerk sarcasm, the clenched jaw, the sudden rush to correct someone. It's that internal contract you never signed, but still obey. If they come at me, I must respond. But you don't. Not anymore. Because if you're serious about becoming unbothered, you can't keep paying for the reactions you regret. You must start seeing your triggers not as truths, but as invitations to train. Every insult, every slight, every disrespectful moment isn't a demand for your energy. It's a test, and if you keep failing it, not only will people stop respecting you, you'll stop respecting yourself. This is the real turning point. Not when you learn how to clap back faster, but when you realize you don't have to clap back at all. That sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is nothing. Not because he's weak, but because he's watching, calculating, choosing to remain in control. Because while everyone else is throwing sparks, he's making sure there's nothing inside him that's flammable. To be unbothered You must stop rewarding the world with your reactions and start training your nervous system to pause the observer reclaim. This isn't passivity. This is war with your impulses. And the man who wins that war becomes untouchable. The strategic pause. Train yourself to do nothing. There's a kind of power that most men never access, not because it's hidden, but because it feels unnatural at first. It goes against everything your instincts scream when you're disrespected, everything your pride demands when you're challenged. But it's the kind of power that separates men who are merely reactive from men who are untouchable. And it begins with one counterintuitive skill: doing nothing. Not out of fear, not because you're frozen, but because you've trained yourself to stay still when every cell in your body wants to lash out. You see, most people live on autopilot. Someone provokes, they react. Someone questions them, they defend. Someone lies about them, they rush to explain. And it feels justified. It feels necessary. But what if I told you that your first impulse is almost always the wrong one? Not because you're broken, but because you've been conditioned. You were taught to win arguments, not master silence. You were taught to fix everything immediately, not let some things break on their own. You were trained to respond, not reflect. And that's why your nervous system is addicted to motion, verbal motion, emotional motion. Any motion that makes you feel like you're doing something about the discomfort. But here's the truth no one tells you. Not everything needs to be answered. Not everything deserves a reaction. And some things require your stillness more than your strength. Doing nothing is not weakness, it's warfare. It's the ability to hold your posture when someone else is losing theirs, to remain unshaken when chaos begs you to tremble. And in that pause, in that split second of doing nothing, you regain what most men lose: everyday choice. Because that's what the strategic pause gives you: space between stimulus and response. Space to watch your ego flare up and decide not to feed it. Space to let the insult hang in the air without catching it. Space to examine the situation not through wounded pride, but through calculated detachment. Epictetus once asked, "Is a man's worth measured by the noise he makes?" No. His worth is measured by what he can withstand without losing who he is. So how do you train yourself to pause? You start by paying attention to the very moment you feel hijacked. That rising heat in your chest, the tightness in your fists, the sharp words forming behind your teeth. That's the flashpoint. That's where your old self used to take over. But not anymore. Now, you insert stillness. You take one breath. You shift your posture. You go silent. Not as a tactic to manipulate, but as a ritual to reclaim. The pause isn't just silence, it's observation. It's your training ground. In that pause, you ask, what does reacting get me? Who benefits if I lose control? Is this fight even worth my energy, or is it bait? Because more often than not, it is bait. And once you take it, you're no longer the man in command. You're the man being controlled by whoever shouted first, accused louder, or posted faster. That's not dominance. That's dependency. But when you pause, everything shifts. You become harder to read, harder to provoke. You give nothing away. And in a world that feeds off your triggers, that kind of stillness is pure rebellion. Let others interpret your silence however they want. Let them call it weakness, confusion, guilt. That's their projection, not your truth. because you know what you're doing. You're staying above the noise. You're training yourself to act only when it serves your integrity, not your insecurity. And eventually, something strange happens. You stop fearing silence. You stop fearing not having the last word. You begin to realize that most problems don't require a reaction, they require endurance. And the more you practice the pause, the more you'll start seeing what's real beneath the drama. The manipulations, the emotional chess games people try to play. You'll start to see clearly, and the man who sees clearly holds the highest ground. So train for this, every day, in small moments, in heated ones. Train when you feel cut off in traffic, when someone criticizes you publicly, when your partner says something unfair. Train not to shrink, but not to strike either. Train to stay centered, still, immovable, because the man who can pause, who can truly pause when it matters, she doesn't just avoid the fire, he walks out of it untouched. And that, brother, is a power no one can fake. It's not noise. It's not performance. It's earned. And once it's earned, no one can take it. The discipline of stillness. Master the art of letting it burn. Stillness is not something you stumble into by accident. It's not a lucky temperament or a gift from a calm childhood. It's a discipline, a craft, a blade forged through fire, not absence of fire. Because no man becomes unbothered in theory, he becomes unbothered in battle. It's easy to stay still when things are going your way, when no one is questioning you, when no one is testing you. But what happens when you're betrayed, when someone lies about you, when everything in you wants to correct, confront, collapse into fury? That's where the real work begins. You must learn to let it burn. Let them misunderstand you. Let the rumors spread. Let their ego swell while they think they've won. Let the fire rise and stay still anyway. Because the moment you step into the drama, you become part of it. The moment you try to extinguish every flame, you start playing firefighter in a world built on gasoline. And here's the truth: most fires don't need to be put out. They need to burn out. You are not required to save everyone from the consequences of their own immaturity. You are not required to clean up every emotional mess you didn't make. You are not required to rush into every conflict just because your pride feels itchy. Stillness isn't passive. It's calculated restraint. It's the skill of letting noise crash against your frame while you remain rooted. And it's not just about what you do, but what you don't do. You don't clarify every misunderstanding. You don't chase closure. You don't beg to be seen. Because you know your peace isn't up for negotiation. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." That's the discipline, to become the unmoved object in a world obsessed with movement. But don't confuse stillness with detachment. You still feel, you still care. You're just no longer enslaved by every emotional current. You're no longer in the business of proving yourself every time someone doubts you. You've stopped auditioning for acceptance. Because the man who lives in stillness no longer needs permission to be whole. This is how you train. You pick the moments where your old self would have erupted and you hold your frame instead. You let the discomfort rise without flinching. You observe the flames of gossip, manipulation, rejection, and you refuse to pour yourself into the fire. Because now you understand. Your energy is not an automatic offering. It's sacred. The world will keep testing you. It will throw cheap shots and passive-aggressive comments. It will provoke you with delays, disrespect, and disloyalty. Let it. Let the fire dance. Let the weak reveal themselves. Let the emotional arsonists light their matches. And you stay still, because nothing rattles manipulators more than a man who won't perform. Nothing frustrates the insecure more than silence they can't decode. And nothing earns respect faster than a man who lets fire burn and doesn't blink. Stillness isn't about pretending you don't notice. It's about knowing exactly what's happening and choosing not to be consumed by it. And that choice, that sovereign, steady choices, the mark of a leader. A warrior, a man in command of his own battlefield. You don't fight every battle. You fight the ones that matter. You let petty be on its own. And with every moment, you choose to remain still. You stack an unshakable reputation, not just in the eyes of others, but within yourself. You become the kind of man who can sit in a storm and still hear his own breath. Who can feel the wind of insult without letting it steer the wheel? Who can let the fire burn around him and walk through the ashes untouched, not because he avoided the chaos, but because he mastered himself within it? That's not luck. That's not just how you are. That's discipline, rehearsed, refined, earned. And when you earn that kind of stillness, you don't just become unbothered. You become untouchable. Tactical application. Practice unbothered in real life. Stillness is beautiful in theory, but real mastery, that gets tested in motion. It's one thing to stay calm in your room, with no interruptions, no chaos, no disrespect, but out there at work, in your relationships, in public. That's where the training either shows up or falls apart. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your discipline. And that means your ability to stay unbothered will be challenged exactly where it's hardest, where ego, time, and emotion collide. Picture this. You walk into a leadership meeting and a colleague throws a subtle jab in front of everyone. Well, if we had done it your way last quarter, we wouldn't be in this mess. Eyes turn. The silence stretches. Every muscle in your body wants to correct him, to fire back, to clear your name. But instead, you pose. You look at him, not with tension, but with ease. You nod once, and you say nothing, because in that moment, you realize something most men never see. Not every lie needs your truth. Some accusations reveal more about the accuser than the accused. And the man who can absorb the tension of a room without flinching becomes the man people instinctively follow. That's tactical stoicism. That's real-world stillness. Now imagine your partner says something passive-aggressive, something that touches a nerve. I guess being successful is more important to you than actually being present. It's not just words, it's a shot fired at your integrity and your reflex to explain, to justify, to defend. But what if you didn't? What if you paused, took a breath, and said, "You might be right," not sarcastically, not to win, but because you no longer give away your power to every emotional demand. You don't argue for your worth anymore. You demonstrate excellently, consistently. To train this in the wild, you must adopt a mental framework. 4 words: observe, pause, decide, disengage. Observe without reacting. That means you let the moment unfold without interpreting it as a threat. Not every sharp comment is an attack. Not every delay is disrespect. Sometimes, people are just projecting, and you don't need to catch what they throw. Pause before responding. This isn't about freezing. It's about buying space. Emotional real estate. The man who creates a gap between stimulus and reaction controls the pace of every interaction, and power, in any room, always belongs to the one who dictates pace. Decide whether your energy is worth investing. Ask, will this move me forward or pull me sideways? Will my response create clarity or just feed confusion? If the answer isn't clear, the answer is probably silence. Disengage with grace. That doesn't mean ghosting. It means refusing to entertain drama as a legitimate language. It means exiting the emotional casino where others gamble for your attention. Your presence is no longer freely available, it's earned. This is how you practice being unbothered, not in theory, but in the trenches of daily life. When a stranger cuts you off in traffic, when a coworker undermines you, when someone trolls you online, don't flinch. Don't explain. Don't descend into their chaos. Let the moment pass. Let it burn itself out. There's nothing to prove. Not to people who misunderstand you. Not to people who misjudge you. Your calm becomes a mirror that reflects their insecurity back at them. And most won't like what they see. They'll try harder to provoke you. That's how you know it's working. You are disrupting the emotional economy they rely on to feel superior. And eventually, people stop testing you, not because they've changed, but because you have. You're no longer enrolled in their game. You've replaced reflex with response, reaction with reason, noise with direction. You've become the kind of man who's unfazed by noise because he's focused on signal. A man who walks through pettiness like it's fog present, but powerless. A man who practices calm, not just when it's convenient, but when it's called for most. And when others witness that, when they see you remain grounded in rooms where others panic, they don't just respect you, they lean toward you. They want to follow you. Because calm is contagious, and leadership is emotional gravity. So train for that, not just in silence, but in real moments, hard moments, the ones that poke at your pride, challenge your peace, and dare you to abandon your discipline. Let the world throw its chaos. The quiet power. Let your silence earn their respect. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels dangerous. It's the silence of a man who's been through enough to know when to speak and when to simply observe. A man who doesn't raise his voice to be heard because his presence already says enough. A man who doesn't interrupt the foolish, lets them finish, because he knows. Some lessons teach themselves. Most people waste their strength proving they have it. They fill space with explanations, apologies. Argument shopping someone will finally understand them, accept them, validate them. But the moment you begin to speak for your worth, you lose it. The man who truly knows his value doesn't convince, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. He allows time, outcomes, and silence to do the talking. You want to be respected? Learn to say less. In a loud room, the quietest man often commands the most attention, not because he's hiding, but because he has nothing to prove. His restraint signals depth. His calm signals control. His silence, that signals danger to anyone who lives on emotional chaos because they can't predict him. And they can't manipulate what doesn't react. Your ability to remain composed under pressure is what sets you apart in every environment. In leadership, it earns you trust. In conflict, it earns you leverage. In relationships, it earns you mystery, and in a world that overshares everything, mystery is magnetic. Because people are drawn to what they can't read. They lean in to hear what you're not saying. That's not just psychology, that's strategy. Marcus Aurelius said, "Withdraw into yourself." The rational soul is stronger when it has fewer distractions, and he was right. Silence is where your strength recharges. It's where you exit the noise, recalibrate your focus, and regain your emotional autonomy. While others drown in urgency, you breathe in quiet. While they react, you watch. While they burn out, you build. And eventually, they notice. They may not compliment your silence. They may not say it out loud, but they'll pause when you speak. They'll think twice before crossing you. They'll feel the weight of your stillness, and it will unsettle them in the best possible way, because you're no longer playing by their emotional rules. You've rewritten the game. So let your silence speak. Let it build suspense. Let it raise questions you don't answer. Let it filter out those who only understand noise. The right people will hear you without words. The wrong ones will mistake your calm for weakness and reveal themselves. Either way, you win. Because the man who can stay quiet while still being felt is no longer chasing respect. He commands it. Final command. When you choose peace without permission, there comes a moment when something inside you clicks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a lock turning. And in that moment, you stop waiting for permission to be calm. You stop asking the world to approve of your peace. You simply claim it. You no longer explain why you didn't react. You no longer defend your silence. You don't apologize for being composed in a chaotic world, because now you understand peace is not the absence of pressure, it's the presence of power. Most people believe calm is something you arrive at once. Life cooperates. Once people behave, once respect is given. But that's the lie that keeps them trapped. Because life won't always cooperate. People won't always play fair. And respect? It's rarely handed out before you've earned it. That's why peace has to be chosen intentionally, repeatedly, even when it's misunderstood. Especially when it's misunderstood, because the moment you stop performing for emotional approval, you become untouchable. They'll call you distant, cold, detached. Let them. They don't understand what you had to unlearn. They don't know how many wars you had to lose before you realized some battles don't need to be fought, they just need to be walked past. And when they provoke you now, you don't respond. Not because you're weak, but because you're done paying attention to noise that doesn't move your mission forward. You've redefined strength. It's not shouting louder. It's not proving points. It's staying rooted in a storm. You don't need to explain anymore. Epictetus said, "When someone provokes you, remember, it is your own opinion that provokes you." That's the last frontier. Realizing that even anger, even offense, even pride, they rise only when we give them permission. But now, you've revoked that access. You've built a boundary they can't see, but they will feel. Because the most commanding man in the room isn't the one who speaks most. It's the one who speaks last, if at all. So this is your final command. Hold your peace. Not because it's trendy, but because it's yours. You don't need to be understood to be respected. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to win arguments to win your life. Train yourself to be unbothered and let the world exhaust itself trying to figure out why you're still standing while everything else burns. If you made it this far, you're not like most men. Most would have clicked away. Most would have dismissed this as too soft, too slow, too uncomfortable. But not you. You stayed. You're the kind of man who's tired of letting the world dictate how he reacts. Tired of being pulled into fires he never lit. Tired of bleeding energy just to defend a peace that was always yours to begin with. So, if this video hit home, don't keep it to yourself. There are men out there walking through silent battles, burning on the inside, thinking they're the only ones. But one share, one comment, one silent nod of, "I've been there too," that's enough to shake something loose in another man's chest. And that's what this space is about. Not ego, not performance, but restoration. A brotherhood of men who choose clarity over chaos, command over noise, purpose over pride. So if that's you, subscribe. Not for me, but because every time you come back here, you're helping build something rare. A place where calm is not weakness, it's war strategy, and you're not alone in choosing it.